Well, hello, PaleoFx tribe. It has been a minute. I have been in the last 2 weeks or so. I have not done a live, but I have been on many, many other people's podcasts. But it's I'm a little bit rusty, Dr. Koche. I haven't. Focus. Dr. Lisa Koche, or Coach. The last time I saw you was in Tampa over New Year's at JJ Virgin's house. And let me just say that things were a little bit different in January than where we find ourselves today.
Absolutely.
So there is that. But first off, I would like you to tell people just a little bit of how you came into medicine, because this is a fantastic story. And I think it would be better served to come from the person who lived it, come through their mouths, because it's fascinating. And I'll just preface this by saying that I love people who come to medicine through a personal history story of their own. Like, you're familiar with Dr. Anna Kambeka, kind of it's the same thing. So these are people, in my opinion, who come into medicine out of heart and not out of just, hey, I want to make bank. They come to it with a personal reason, which I think makes all the difference in the world. But I'll kick it over to you, Dr. Koche.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me today, Keith. I've been really excited about chatting. So I describe it as the gift from the universe, where the universe was looking out for me because I had no opportunity to pick any other type of career or path. Hanging out at the age of 15, went in for a camp physical, was feeling totally fine, and was diagnosed with childhood leukemia. So at that point, kind of the world got rocked a bit. I went to high school with a big old steroid fat face and a wig, and I made it through really, really well. I was very blessed, and the chemotherapy path was very traditional. My parents didn't know anything about integrative, and they just had a sick kid, and we went forward. And luckily, the cancer I had was, very, very responsive to chemo. So when I went back immediately, almost into remission, finished out all the therapy, was doing really well, had just grown all my hair back, got into a great college. And then they found a mass on my ovary the very first time I ever went for a pap smear, and they thought it was a cyst. And I woke up from the surgery and it was hidden leukemic cells. So that was kind of put everything back into a tailspin. And I ended up in New York City at Sloan Kettering with a specialist in relapsed leukemia, and had to go through getting chemotherapy again. So my junior year of college, and lost all my hair, had just grown back to about where it is now, lost it all again, which is really rough for a 20-year-old. It's rough anytime, but that was rough. And promptly into this second round of chemo, I went into heart failure. So there's one particular med that does that more than others. And so that's been a lot of my journey. When I got the heart failure, that was the first time I blended traditional and integrative medicine, which is kind of a fun story because my uncle was a podiatrist. And at the time, he just researched cardiomyopathy, which is heart toxicity from chemo, and sent me 2 supplements. I didn't know what the heck they were. I had never taken a supplement before. My family didn't take supplements. And they kept coming on auto ship. And they were coenzyme Q10 and L-carnitine, which are, the 2 biggies for your heart. Right. So I rebounded my EF, which is the ability of the heart to squeeze. Normal is about 60. I had gone down to 20. I rebounded to 50 to 55, and I was able to get off meds, stayed on some supplements for a while, then got off those. I could run a 15K. I was fine as far as we knew. And during college, I knew I wanted to go into medicine because I had seen it. I had asked a lot of questions, a lot of why, like, why did I get sick? And why are these other people, like, why are we treating them this way? And my brain was always on that path. And got into medicine. The first person I interviewed with said, why do you want to go into pediatric oncology, which is what I thought, because that's all I had ever been exposed. I'm going to go help kids because I got through this, And the very first guy that interviewed me looked at me and he said, that's not what you're going to want to do. Why would you want to do that? Don't you want to prevent it? And I sat there and he's like, wouldn't that be hard for you? And then I went home and I was like, he's 100% correct. I don't want to do this at all. I want to prevent kids or people from getting disease.
Well, what a very insightful thing for him to say. And
Right,
for someone who I would assume was immersed in Western medicine at that time.
Absolutely. Right. Absolutely. And, these angels and these teachers come to us, and just such interesting, when I look back on my story, the people that caused pivots, sometimes it's fascinating. And he was one of them. So I went into internal medicine because it seemed like the broadest approach to prevention, and quickly found that I wasn't getting the answers even there. I would ask why. We'd diagnose a patient with a problem. We'd do scans, we'd do blood work, or they'd come in with different symptoms. And the answer I would get is, this is just how we do it, over and over and over again. So for me, that led me a little more on the path of studying things outside of the box. I would listen to my patients. They were trying new things, and I was feeling good, but not great. And I was lucky enough to get pregnant because we didn't know if I could. And I got pregnant first time that we tried it. And I had my daughter. And soon thereafter, my immune system went crazy. So I ended up with Hashimoto's and psoriasis and sinus problems. And they thought they were going to have to operate on my eye. And so that was the next journey with my own personal health. And I had already fixed my TSH. It was in a nice, pretty picture for my thyroid, and I still felt terrible. So I went to an endocrinologist who had nothing to add, and in fact told me to follow up in 6 weeks to retest my TSH that was already perfect with his nurse practitioner. Like, that's literally what he said to me. So another angel that came in my path, because after I had some few choice words under my breath to him, I went home and said, if that's how he's treating a doctor, like, what about every other human that's seeing him? And apparently I've got to figure this out. So I trained in functional medicine and nutrition and integrative and studied mitochondria. And then what happened was I was actually able to get myself well enough through a combination of kinesiology or muscle testing, different healers that then became part of my team, and upper cervical work and energy work, that I was able to have my son. So I was able to get pregnant at 41 with one ovary, 5 years of chemo, and no fertility help. And so that was pretty amazing. But when I delivered him, it was because my heart gave out at the end, and it had stepped down a little with my daughter, so I couldn't run 15Ks. I could run a 5K. After my son, they had to deliver me, him at 35 weeks under general cardiac anesthesia. I was asleep. It was like I had a gallbladder and that baby was taken out. So that was pretty traumatic. And he's now just turned 9. So I spent the past 9 years, diving even further into what can I do to help my heart? What can I do to help mitochondrial function? What can I do on the spiritual journey? Because I started realizing that I had abandoned myself a bit, where I was just, healing everybody else, because that's what we often do as empath healers. We fix everyone. And I just was starting to get better, bringing in new modalities, discovered keto way before it was a thing, and putting patients through protocols. And then it just was a little too late, and then not quite enough. And 3 years ago, I just had my anniversary of the biggest event that happened, which was I had a lot of stress. I went through early menopause because of the one ovary and all the stress, and I couldn't walk. So my heart had gone down. My EF went down to 15. I was admitted for 8 days. The heart transplant doctor was in the room on consultation, talking about putting me in the ICU. My cardiologist, who has known my heart for 20 years, stood his ground and said that he thought a certain type of pacemaker that helps the heart synchronize better would work. And after they went back and forth, we agreed to that. And I had this device placed and was able to get out of the hospital. So that was huge. And then I spent the past 3 years, I've continued to heal myself to the place. And this is just the end of this quick story, where about a month ago, I went for my yearly echo, and my ejection fraction is back to 50. He dropped his pen. Nobody understands how I've done this. I'm kicking some butt on the Peloton. I'm actually annoyed I'm not kicking it more than I want to.
Good for you.
But I'm cutting myself a little bit of slack considering my history, and that's really been a lot of the journey. So I used some exosomes, some stem cells, a lot of biohacking tools to get my body back. The biggest, however, was still the spiritual journey of going back to authenticity and finding self-love. And here I sit today. So
what is it about you, Lisa, that allowed you to make it through medical school, but still be open to alternative methods of healing, which I would assume, now I've never gone to medical school, but I would assume that is a subject that's verboten in Western medicine. But what was it about your resolve, or what had you experienced outside of Western medicine that led you to remain very, very open to that? And maybe in addition, the ability to combine the two, because I don't think any of us are anti-Western medicine.
Right.
Western medicine, which I think
and
you did a good job of.
I think I have been the epitome of that. And I would like to say, when you ask what has done it, I mean, the universe kind of, every time that I was supposed to introduce a new modality or learn something, it would be triggered by this body. So it's almost like my body was like a surrogate for humanity, where it's like, let's knock her down this way, like get her to scratch and crawl out of it. Right. And then she'll figure out how to take the best of both worlds and treat all her patients with it. So I would say the resolve is more a couple of things. One is the gift of my own journey, clearly. And the fact that, like, starting so early with supplements that I didn't even know what they were when I was 20, but I needed the chemo. I mean, the chemo healed my leukemia. Mm-hmm. And then coming all the way fast forward to this device in my chest got me out of the hospital. But guess what got me to the place that I'm kicking it on the Peloton? It is exosomes, integrative, biohacking, spiritual work. So, you know, it was probably the combination of my own journey, along with my inquisitive, curious, not taking no for an answer, why kind of drive.
Right. But I think that there are so very few doctors like you. For one, there are more and more who are coming out, which is fantastic. But I think your story really illuminates the fact that people have to really be the champions of their own health and wellness, right? And to take charge of that, and to ask for and seek out doctors who are willing to work with you and at least consider alternative paths to the Western medicine path. Would you agree with that? Yeah.
100%. And I'll tell you, if you look back to when I first started my practice, it was more rare that these ideas, that people had heard of some of these ideas, like the kinesiology or muscle testing that I recommend, or the certain supplements, or this whole spiritual journey. Is really, people are only waking up over maybe the past 5 years or so. Right. And it's been really fun for me to watch. Most of my practice has grown really just from word of mouth, but also from doctors. So it's really easy. And one of my pet peeves is when people in the integrative world that aren't doctors just kind of diss all doctors as, you know, they're traditional and they're whatever, not, you know, because most of us, really no doctor goes to medical school to just make money and you know, be narrow-minded. Like, I think it's more of an educational issue that we're not exposed to these incredible techniques so early, because I would have, dove in right away if they were there. And that's part of my passion. Actually, one of the things that I'm working on is taking the system that I have been able to form just through my own journey and driven by my practice and my patients, and be able to train doctors who have the interest now, because as you said, it's really turning around. I think driven by their patients, because just like you said, the patients are demanding, they're asking, they're inquisitive, they're reading. And if they're not getting anywhere, they're savvy enough now, and your listeners should keep doing that if they haven't done it yet, to find a practitioner who will be a partner with them instead of someone just telling them what to do. So what I'm trying to do is take the different modalities that we provide here and turn it into sort of a consultation where I can sit with doctors or chiropractors and they can pair together, and I can guide them on how to maybe add an arm that is more focused on functional medicine and integrative medicine and some of these diagnostic tools that I've developed over the years. And they can add it without having to go through the rigorous training, because when we criticize these docs, it takes a lot. I mean, for me, I was driven because I didn't feel well. So of course I'm going to do it. But if you just go to a routine practitioner who's doing pretty well, and he or she is forced to see 25, 30 patients a day and they're barely paying their overhead, to get them to go to a functional medicine and, internal medicine fellowship kind of training, it's intense and it's expensive. Each module I did was like $2,500, and that was a long time ago. And I was out of my practice, so there was no income coming in.
Right. Yeah, it's so, and I can appreciate that. I mean, it's kind of the same with all people who are overworked and just don't have time. So this could come back to not just the doctor, but the individual patient who, is working 2 jobs, trying to make ends meet. I know that's a cliche, but I mean, it's very, very real. And do they have time when they're off to be able to do the research and be able to dig into this stuff? And it's, and then you start relying on experts, and then you don't know how to figure out who an expert is because you don't have time to do that kind of research. And it's just a snowball effect.
Right. And I think that's where what's unique about my practice, even in the world of functional medicine, is that I have continued to take insurance. So all the way through, people with the level of training in functional and integrative medicine that I have do not. As a classic thing, they don't take insurance.
Right.
They're missing most of the population that doesn't even have the awareness. Just like you said, they don't have time to research it. They just know they're not at the top level of their game, right? Something's off, but I got to get through it. I got to power through. I got to go. Whereas if I can catch those people, and I do, they come in for a cold or whatever when they actually have to come in, and then I'll sit with them and just say, do you feel in control of your life? They come in to see me for this thing and I'm directing to some spiritual work.
Right.
Or, hey, did you know if you take like at least 5,000 a D, I don't care if you take anything else, you're less likely to get sick again. So I can capture them quickly at those visits and hopefully raise awareness and open their mind a little bit. And that's on us, and why I'm passionate about potentially training docs on how to introduce this in a way that won't make them stressed.
Right. And is the reason that most integrative medicine doctors do not take insurance is because it is such a heavy admin and overhead burden? And is that the...
I think it's multifocal, frankly. I think number one is the most important reason is that the patients are incredibly complex. So it's not like, again, I come in and I just want part of what is easy about general internal medicine. You come in, you just need your blood pressure tweaked, or your blood pressure medicine tweaked, or maybe your follow up on your labs, which can be done fairly quickly. Mm-hmm. But if I get someone who comes in and they've got the stack, and we're like, oh crap, of like all the records of every doctor they've been to for the past 20 years, and I'm their last hope, and I'm going to fix it, right?
Right.
So that is a massive time commitment, and when you look at insurance reimbursement, it does not cover that. So what I have to do and what I've done is direct people so that I can at least get them somewhere, because somewhere is better than nowhere. And the reason why my clinic has done well is because I've got other healers and other services that are not insurance based, so it can supplement to the overhead.
Right. Got it. That was just an aside question. I just, not being in the business, I think I know why, but not being in it makes me not an expert for sure.
Right.
So let's circle back around to when we last saw each other in January in Tampa. And at that point, I think everyone there, you could mention gut health too, and they would be like, yeah, very important, and go on with conversation about something else. And that quickly turned into, excuse me, by the time late February, March hit, gut health is paramount.
Absolutely.
Paramount. So can you speak to gut health as it pertains to protecting ourselves from any type of pathogen that we may come across or virus?
Yeah. And I mean, even more than just any type of pathogen. So when I do initial intake on patients, one of the first things I do is go back to the beginning and ask if they've had a history of a lot of antibiotics, if they remember as a kid. And the answer is almost invariably, every time. Yeah, I think I did. I had a lot of like ear infections, or depending on the age range of the patient. And then I go through and say, okay, so then in grade school, middle school, high school, did you have belly aches, headaches, fatigue, mono, any of those types of symptoms? Do you ever get bloaty, constipated? And it's always yes. I mean, I'd say 75% of the people that I'm seeing. So the first point is that an unhealthy gut, which we call increased intestinal permeability or leaky gut, is pretty much, everywhere. So
Right.
you can't escape it at this point because you've had antibiotics, it's in your water, it's in your food. You've had Advils and other medications and food that's genetically modified. So really all of us, unless we pay attention and get this treated, are struggling with the inability of the gut to digest and absorb appropriately. And when that happens, we're a setup for everything. It's really a cornerstone for our immune system. Like, as you alluded to, absolutely, the immune system is based in your gut, and a lot of people don't realize that. But also things like neurotransmitters, your mood. About 80% of serotonin is produced there, and not in your brain like you would think. So understanding the importance of a healthy gut is how I spend a lot of my educational time. And I have a graph that I show patients where it's thyroid, adrenals, hormones, mitochondrial function. And I tell them, in order to get this stable and healthy and immune function, we will start by evaluating all of these and supporting them. But if you want to be fixed, you've got to peel the onion. And the onion layers are what's caused these systems inside to crash. And the biggest onion layer is the health and status of your gut. Mm-hmm. So, that is 100% where we start here as well. And we happen to treat it and diagnose and treat it using muscle testing, just because I find it faster, less expensive than a lot of the fancy tests that are out there.
So there is the idea of gut health before you are exposed to any kind of pathogen or any kind of creepy crawly out there. I'll just put it that way. And then there's the idea of, okay, what do I do if my gut is unhealthy and now I'm in the middle of whether it's real or concocted, and that's a whole other storyline. But if there is a potential now that I have an unhealthy gut and there's the potential of possibly me coming across something, what do I do now?
Right. So I think obviously we want to get people ahead of time. And I think that's one of the gifts of this pandemic, is that people that maybe weren't aware before, if they're paying attention, they'll seek out help to get the gut, even if they're not symptomatic. Understand that a lot of people are not symptomatic and still have leaky gut. Mm-hmm. So that can grab people ahead, give them easy ways to get it healed, which of course involves a lot of dietary changes, as you are well versed in. But I think if also the point being that it's never too late. So if you do get sick, if you get an infection, if we don't know what it is, the health and status of your gut starting with what you're eating during that time. So if you hadn't cut the gluten out prior, get it out now. It's going to help, working on the sugar, working on eating clean, and then bringing in things that will help the lining of the intestine at that time, including things like immunoglobulins, which will help the lining heal, but also boost your immune system. It would be very much warranted.
Right. Let's dive into something that may or may not be a little bit controversial, which I can't even believe I'm saying that now, but what about masks? Right. So, I mean, I kind of lose my mind that we're still even having this conversation right now. But let's break down the whole mask wearing and try to look at it from the purely medical side of things first, or that side, and then if you like, we can discuss the other side of it.
No, I will definitely. I'm happy to discuss my take on it all, and I will say that confusion about not just the mask, but all recommendations is what brought me to be a little bit more vocal. So when we were first when this first came out, and it was so much fear-based, and we all went into that fear-based place because we didn't know what the heck was going on. Mm-hmm. There was, you're going to die. If you go in the ICU, you're going to die. There's not enough ventilators. And then there was, don't go out of your house without a mask or without gloves, and you have to scrub, or you're going to kill someone else or yourself, right? So there was this huge dichotomy. And I was watching, and after I got through my own processing of fear for a minute, I said, hold up, where is humanity that is in the middle? You are not addressing normal people and what they need to be doing and can be doing. And who is the expert that should be on TV talking about that? And then I was like, I think it's me, because I'm the internal medicine doc, right? I deal with infections. I know how to quell people's fear, because this seems like fear mongering and nothing else on TV. And I know integrative approaches. So I started speaking, and when the mask concept came out at the beginning, it seemed to make sense, I guess, from what they were talking about with what we thought the virus was doing. So we thought at the beginning that the virus was traveling very long distances, that it was coming out in respiratory droplets. And then they quickly retracted that recommendation, if you remember,
right.
And said, don't wear the mask, it's going to make it worse. And then everybody said, okay, great, I don't want this thing on my face anyway. You know, I'm not going to wear a mask. So in my office, we weren't wearing masks. We were just scrubbing our hands and scrubbing the surfaces. And then when it more recently came back, the recommendations, if we want to call it that people were saying to wear them again, I did my usual, okay, why are we shifting back again? My intuition saying this doesn't make sense. And I tried to pull the scientific data, and there was not any. Right. There was nothing. And if even more than that, it was almost saying the opposite, right? So when a surgeon is scrubbed and wearing a mask, it's because the surgeon is trying not to drip saliva into a sterile environment. It's right. Not that the surgeon is worried about getting an infection, right? So I just kept looking, feeling the particulate size of the virus from what they had said, which at that point I was questioning everything that was being said, was too small for most of these masks anyway. So for me, it became the science and data isn't there. So when I see that, I said, what else could be going on as a potential agenda for why they're pushing this so hard? And we can talk about the generalities of my opinion on that in a minute if you want.
Sure.
And then it was, well, I'm not, what could be bad about wearing it, right? So I'm a do no harm kind of girl. That's the Hippocratic oath.
Right.
I started looking up, well, what harm can you get from wearing these things? And I actually found some harm besides just the psychological harm. There, you know, if you have a mask in front of your face and are wearing it for hours on end, you are rebreathing your own carbon dioxide. And when that happens, you become hypoxic, which means lower oxygen levels in your blood. And guess what can happen? You can get viruses, or you can get depressed, or you can get, cardiovascular events. So that was enough for me to kind of take the stand of if a patient, but I'm also an empath, I'm also sensitive, and I'm also incredibly aware of this kind of fear mongering that's gone on. So I've tried to lead by the example of if the patient walks in, and right now in my office, they are screening people downstairs because it's not just me in the building, with a temperature check and some questions, and they're handing them a mask. So almost everybody's walking up into my space with it, but then they quickly see that we're not wearing them unless the patient asks. So I will put it on, not happily, if the patient is uncomfortable. You know, I asked them I had a patient the other day, and her dad has just gone through chemo, and I said, absolutely, let me grab it, and I put it on during the encounter. So that kind of summarizes it for the most part. I am fairly passionate, and I'd love your take on how we could do this. I really want to make sure whatever science against wearing it, we can get it out louder, because I'm nervous about the kids in the fall.
Right.
And I don't want them having to deal with that. I think it's traumatizing. It's traumatizing for all of us to see. We can't see expressions. We can't see smiles. We can't tell what people are thinking or saying. It's a very huge impact psychologically.
Right. So for me, very early on, I did not have the science background. Didn't know early on, mask good, bad, whatever. I didn't know. I was watching the people who I trusted and did know. So I was keeping my eye on those people who luckily enough, I could text most of these people. Yeah. So there was that, but I came to this with a very, very different point of view. I came to this from spending many years in the military, many years in the political science realm, and many years knowing techniques of herd control. Yeah. And techniques of propaganda, and both from the avoidance side, if you get caught and put into a situation where you're trying to be brainwashed, where you're trying to where you're trying to be cracked, so to speak, these are the techniques that will be used against you, and here's how to recognize them, and here's some defenses for you to keep up. And when you look at what was going on, and I was trying to separate the medical side of things from the potential of a herd control issue, that was all looking very textbook. Herd control, herd control, herd control. And I have to say now, I have not deviated from that. It, to me, looks like herd control.
Well, so coming from someone with absolutely no military background, you heard my story, and it's all just all journey and medicine and heart. I've never been political. I've not felt as called ever as I have now. And one of the turning points, actually, there's two big turning points for why I agree and why I started really questioning and speaking out even more strongly. And one of them was the interview of the doctors in Bakersfield that got censored. So I'm sure you've talked about that, but those docs, when they were so real and they were so raw, and they had their numbers and they had their stuff together, and it was their own information. And when I watched that interview and heard that it was censored, that's when I knew. Well, actually, probably the first step that made me know something was up was when our local hospital was furloughing the staff.
Right.
We went from like extreme panic and everyone's going to be like, we have to open this outside ward because we can't handle the patients, to my friends getting furloughed. I mean, my one of my staff's partner as a nurse practitioner got let off. She had to go for 2 weeks. And then ER docs that weren't getting shifts. That's when I said, okay, if there's a health pandemic and the whole purpose of lockdown is so that we don't overwhelm the healthcare system, then why are my friends not getting paid?
Right.
And then I saw the censorship. So even for someone who is more Pollyanna, who doesn't understand these types of military, protocols and things, my background is still the why. So that's where I just said, okay, I don't get it. Something's off here. And then I saw the video of the guy from the Bronx who was, did you see, like probably about a 30-ish-year-old critical care doctor begging into his phone. He was saying, we are not treating these people correctly, and the ventilator is killing them. Someone has to listen to me. And he stepped down from his position and went back into the ER. And when I saw him too, it was my heart, because I know you can't act that. Right. It was real. And then I said, okay, so we don't understand this virus. I don't blame anyone for that. We don't understand it. We don't know where it's coming from. But then why are we not changing these lockdown rules? And why are we keeping businesses closed if the hospitals are empty? So that's where I came from. And it's very easy to jump from there to the most basic military, which is divide and conquer. And for me, I could look as someone who's not into politics and see what's the quickest way to divide humans, right? Number one, politics, because they'll all scream at each other for hours on end. So let's make this political. Number two, maybe it's the color of their skin. And then number 3 and 4 and 5, keep them separate. Put a mask over their face. And most of my patients were feeling the same way. And the good that I can get from it is I don't give energy to darkness. So that's where maybe we differ a little bit, because I can't go there. I don't know. I don't know who, or really want to know who is behind this agenda. I know that it's more of a spiritual type of a battle at this point, and I know that light and love is always going to win. Right. So I just focus on that and bringing people inside, because I don't think they realized how advanced we were as a humanity, how connected and how conscious we had already been waking up, and that this pandemic time, at least for my patients and for me, has provided so many beautiful benefits of the ascension journey, of going inside and of purging the stuff that's keeping us dense, which just brought us all together. Right. Yeah. I look at this as it's almost like multi-level chess, right? There's games being played at if you want to call it the 3D level, and there's games being played higher, and there's games being played higher and higher yet.
And each of these games is very, very important. But most people are seeing these issues that well below where these games are being played, right? And they are, I think for the individual to realize that no matter what side of the fence you're on politically, no matter what side of the fence you're on any of these issues, that those who are in control of things win no matter what, right? And these things are being unfurled purposely to put a schism in the population, because you're right, that's playbook step number one: divide first, because, and especially in a democracy, the only way a democracy can come down is with a divided populace and from the inside out. That's the textbook. And that's exactly what's going on right now. I mean, all of these issues are rolling out according to script. I mean, if you go back and look at the time, according to script, and it's just schism after schism after schism after schism, even within close bands of people. So I'll give you an example. There's a group of us that gets together every 4th of July, and we go to Seaside, Florida to just hang out, and that's been our thing for a while. Well, now Seaside, Florida has this deal where you can't go on the beach unless you're social distancing, which just like, are you kidding me with this? So my position on that, and Michelle's position, is more so me, because I'm the guy that gets uppity about this, is I will support no city, no business, no anything that supports wearing a mask or this ludicrous social distance. I just won't do it. It is against my principle. So I can't speak it on forums like this and then go out and do otherwise. And so that's creating a schism between our group.
Well, I might be able to help you a little on that one, only because the beach is here. They say, I'm gonna send you, I'll text you a picture later, because they say social distancing, it's fine. It's just like it always ever was. So
it may be something that Seaside, the city itself, instituted. I don't know, but it may be all for naught, and Keith is just getting all hot and bothered, and it happened this morning. So. Okay,
well, I'll tell you, there were police there. You know, this is Clearwater Beach, which is like the most hopping place.
Right.
And there are police there, and there's some signs, but it's not a big deal. And I hate to see you not connect, because you're so needed to be a voice, that you may want to weigh that out. But I think that nobody knows how the best way is to get over these things. Like Mike, they opened summer camp, which I was so excited about so my son was able to go, and these poor teachers are having to wear masks. But my kid didn't have to. So they made him do some hand sanitizer. Am I going to argue about the toxins that are in the hand sanitizer?
Right.
Or am I going to be thankful that he's, playing soccer with his friends?
But all of these schisms just build up and build up and build up, and it's death by 1,000 cuts is really the way the game is being played, right? Let's see if we can figure out what more schism to create.
Well, I think I'd love to say, though, that at the same time, and I definitely hear you and I see it, but at the same time, there's so many beautiful things that have happened.
Oh, yeah.
And I think if we talk just really briefly about the racial unrest that's happening, I mean, just the mere fact that none of us white people had any idea how bad it still really is to be Black in this country, that was a good thing to come out of this, because we are going to stand up for our friends and our colleagues, hopefully more than we ever have, now that we're a little bit more aware. My patients, every one of us are talking about, during this time of this pandemic, so many emotions are coming out, and I'm teaching them tools, and so many of them are doing it on their own, where they can sit with these emotions, and first they have to figure out, are these mine or is this the collective? Because a lot of us are just feeling the fear and uncertainty of the collective, and that's a skill that if you can figure it out, you are going to have a superpower. So diving in and trying to separate those two out, and then when you're left with what these emotions are, and they're usually the same, we're all the same.
Right.
It's unworthiness, it's fear, it's guilt, it's grief, and self-sacrifice. So if we sit with those emotions and we can transmute them, and there was a beautiful quote by Brené Brown. I don't know if you've heard this one, but she's so awesome. And she said, any emotion that is not transmuted is transmitted.
Right.
So you look at like, this cop that and the all the tragedy that's gone on, that person clearly has never worked with transmuting his own, doesn't even know what his own emotions are, right? So if we can take those skills, I don't care what schisms, the schisms aren't going to happen if people are continue to go within and they hold space for others to do the same. And I see so much of that happening on a larger level than it ever has, and the connection between people and people like me. Look, I'm speaking every single day. I wasn't doing that before. I'm bringing my light and my words every single day. So now they've got to deal with some more of these powerhouse light workers stepping up, and they didn't bargain for that. So that's where I'm putting my energy.
Right. It's funny because Michelle and I were just talking about this the other day. About 4 years ago, we saw just this exponential increase in interest in psychedelics and plant medicine. A hockey stick increase in it. And we were like, what do you think is precipitating that? Why would all this interest be kicked up now? Now we know. I really think it was the universe, that whatever you want to call God, universe, is reaching out and saying, you people need to wake up and come around, because I can tell you that particular modality helps with the schism part of things, and people working through all of this pent up emotion, all of these issues they may have in an atmosphere in a productive way, so that it doesn't squeeze out sideways and look like and squeeze out as it's racism, or
transmitted,
some kind of unwarranted violence against somebody else, or whatever it may be, whatever.
And one quote, so have you read Power versus Force?
I don't think I have.
Okay, so David Hawkins is this author. It's a very fat book, so your viewers you don't necessarily need to do it, but you can look up it's called The Map of Consciousness. And what he did was he talks about how people are vibrating at different frequencies, and we're all energy, and that anywhere from 0 to 1,000. And when you hit 200 is when you go from negative emotions or negative frequency into positive, and over 200 comes in like hope, and then eventually peace, love, joy. And then the 1,000s are like the Jesus, Buddha, Moses, enlightened people. And the line that he said that actually impacted me forever was one person vibrating around 500. So that's that person who's willing to sit within, cry out the emotions, journal out the emotions, do the plant, whatever you need to do to work through it and stay in love and gratitude. That one person just existing. So that's what took the pressure off. Right. Just existing negates stadiums full of people below 200. Right. So if each of us just go to that place within and sit with it and work with it, and in whatever way you find to do that, and now there's more and more of us coming out with tools and easy things you can do. It doesn't have to be plant medicine. Yes, that can open people up. It can be as simple as grounding and turning on a guided meditation off of YouTube that's free. The more we move up that scale, the more we're all energy, and the negatives are going to just implode. I truly believe that. And you're seeing these global meditations that are going on. And it feeds into one last point I'll make on this topic, which is the earth itself is shifting. So most of my spiritual teachers talking about how the earth is going from 3D into 5D, right? Or even more. Right. And what does that mean? It means it's becoming more light. And when it does that, the humans, to keep up, we have to become more light. So we are shifting, and a lot of spiritual teachers have been talking about this for years now. We're shifting from a carbon-based physical vessel into one that is more energy. Why we're seeing things like homeopathy is working even better, and more, like you said, people seeking out spiritual work and understanding they need to purge, because we can't hang on this planet if we stay this dense. Right. So some of these events that are happening, could they potentially be a gift from the universe to say, hey, the earth is moving over here. Like, you guys need to hurry up. And then these darker agendas are just, they're not going to be able to exist on the same plane with the new frequency of the earth.
And I've had conversations with people, meet people where they're at, right? I've had conversations with people that are like, okay, that sounds a little woo for me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, think about it this way. Maybe it is. But think about your physical vessel as it is right now. If you go through these practices, you are going to be much better off in this dense physical body than you were before. So if you think about it in no other way, being centered, meditation, all of these energy practices do work on the physical vessel as well. Really work on the physical vessel as well.
Look at me. That's what I'm telling you, what took my heart from probably an ejection fraction of 35 or 40 to where I'm able to push it on Peloton.
Right.
That was me releasing so much deep stuff and doing so much work. So it works. And one of my passions and my goal on this planet is to find the scientific support so that people don't have to call it woo, so that I can connect the science to the spiritual side.
Right. And I think the more people who try it and find, it's just like anything else, right? People try it, they try it, kick the tires, run it around for 30 days, see how you look, feel, and perform. I think you're going to see a big difference just on that level.
Yeah, it's undeniable. Absolutely.
Right. Lisa, tell us about your ebook. So I believe there is an ebook in the discussion part up there at some point. I can't see it because
I wanted to provide a service. It's an overview on how to optimize your mitochondrial function. So how to biohack your body. And I just touch on some of the biggest things that you can implement right away. So from diet to a couple of the mindset points, to therapies that you may or may not have heard of, like red light therapy and oxygen. So check it out, because I view the mitochondria as one of the main ways that we are engaging or interacting science and spiritual, because mitochondria were their own bacteria, and they sense light and they sense thought patterns. And the more we work on them physically, the better the journey of the self-discovery will go as well.
And I would say, if you ever just want to re-experience the internal feeling of awe, study mitochondria, because that is amazing. And it will rekindle your childhood feeling of awe, because you'll just be like, what?
Yeah. And the funny thing, when I first started studying it, my daughter would always ask me to quiz her, right, for her tests. And so she said, "Mom, I want you to quiz me." And I said, "Please don't be history. Please don't be history." And she said, "No, it's biology and it's the mitochondria." So then I was like, I'm all over this. I'm studying the heck out of this. Yes. So she hands me the stack of papers, and the first 10 pages were about a leaf. And I was like, "Jordan, really? Like, I thought this was about mitochondria." And she looks at me, she goes, "Mom, the chloroplast and the mitochondria are exactly the same." And I was like, "What? Wait, what?" And then I'm looking through the papers, and they look exactly the same. So It's one of those where I sat there and I said, I'm going to file that one over here. I don't know what the heck it means yet, but it's interesting. And then I was driving, listening to a podcast of the Jack Cruz, who you may know of who he is. He's a neurosurgeon, right? And he's a little bit on the edge and wild, and definitely bucks trends and likes to cuss a lot on podcasts. And I'm driving on the highway, and he was talking about light and how it affects our mitochondria. And he was like, "People, wake the F up. The chloroplast and the mitochondria are exactly the same." And I was like, "Oh my God, I knew that." So he talks about how when light enters our eyes and how we're very similar to plants. Right. And that opened up another whole world of, whoa, we don't understand this yet. But it's exciting. So
right. Just as an aside, I've had some very, very good conversations with Ryan Freisinger, who is a guy here in Austin who is a healer and just a tremendous guy. I've done a live with him before. He's a tremendous guy. Would love to introduce you to him, Lisa.
Yeah, I love it.
But we've had this discussion before that if mitochondria is in cytoplast, the cytoplasts are very, very similar. then in theory, at some point, we should be able to subsist
just light,
right? Without, and maybe we are evolving into beings who can actually do that. And I know that sounds like sci-fi or crazy talk, but really, I mean, if you look at the two, you're like, how can that not be? I mean, energy is energy, right? And how the entity takes in that energy and disperses it, what does it matter if the plant can do it with sunlight and we have the same machinery?
Yeah, and I'll tell you one other fast tool. So I told you my vessel acts up whenever I'm supposed to learn a new modality. And over this pandemic, I tried to water ski, which I used to be good at, and then my back started hurting. And it wasn't the water skiing, it was me needing to discover something new. And the short story is that the other part of our body that is fueling us with light is our fascia. So I don't know if you've read much, but there is a video called The Living Fascia. And you can actually see, it was a surgeon open the forearm. And we always thought fascia was just like saran wrap that goes around our organs. And people heard of plantar fasciitis, but your fascia is actually a system that goes everywhere. And it turns out that the fascial system may be one of the main ways we are getting light, energy, and even the seat of consciousness, getting that energy to pass. It carries water as well. So the connection between fascia, mitochondrial function, how we can utilize light and energy as fuel is something that is incredibly exciting.
How incredibly interesting. Well, we're running out of time. We're going to have to come back and continue this at some point.
Absolutely.
And like I said before, we actually went live. Really didn't get to any of the questions. Sorry, team. Thank you for putting them together, though. This conversation was fabulous. Thank you very much
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Can't wait to talk again. And I hope to see you very soon in Tampa. If not Tampa, somewhere else very, very soon.
Yeah, but I'll head to Austin.
Awesome. All right. PaleoFx Tribe, I won't be back today. Actually, I will. I have a radio show today. So for anyone in Austin, I'll be on 104.9 The Horn with my good friend Trey Elling, and we'll be discussing state of current affairs and everything going on in Austin right now. So that will be cool. Otherwise, I think Michelle has, I think we have stuff planned for Monday, Facebook Live wise. So Lisa, have a fantastic weekend. Thank you very much.
I'll send you a picture of the non-socially distant beach.
Please do. Please do. As much practice as I had, Lisa, I still have my moments where I flame out, and then I have to bring myself back. Down.
And you want the grounding and that beautiful water in the sand.
I absolutely do. All right, PaleoFx Tribe. We will see you very, very soon. Lisa, I hope to see you again soon.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.